And she was actually asked a phenomenal question from the interviewer here.
Great
So
question.
massive credit. She's basically going to be asked, hey, why doesn't the left use their leverage like the right often does? And her answer is beyond underwhelming.
Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has essentially, used what seems to be a veto power against a lot of progressive priorities, including some of the ones that you've mentioned. But in the House, Democrats have this 2-seat majority. There are 6 members of the squad, of which you are a part. What's stopping you from flexing that same power for your agenda? You just said you would vote against a compromise on qualified immunity. Are you prepared, and the rest of the squad prepared, to use that kind of veto power that you have if you vote as a bloc?
I'm prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure that that our agenda moves forward. But I can't speak for the rest of the squad members. At the end of the day, my sister Ayanna Pressley says it all the time. You vote alone, and you're voting for your districts. So you're voting for the people who voted you in.
There it is. There it is. I've gotten a lot of shit for saying that exact thing in my criticisms of the Justice Democrats. Again, a group which I co-founded. So I know a thing or two about what the idea was, because I was one of the ones who fucking created it. So anyway, I find it hilarious that people who didn't co-create it are telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about when I dissect it and critique them and say, hey, here's what you're doing wrong, here's what you're doing right, so on and so forth. But this is a criticism I've made. That the problem is there's no solidarity, there's no unity, there's no voting together as a bloc, there's no using your leverage. And here, Cori Bush, to her credit, she's being honest, she just comes out and admits it. She said, hey, and by the way, she doesn't even realize it, but she massively throws Ayanna Pressley under the bus here, because Ayanna Pressley is either on purpose or inadvertently doing divide and conquer of the Justice Democrats, of the squad, of the entire left-wing agenda. If she's the one who's functioning as the leader, and by the way, she probably is, because she's been in Congress the longest, and she has a different mindset than a lot of the other ones, Ayanna Pressley says, hey, at the end of the day, you vote alone. At the end of the day, you vote alone. And that effectively functions as divide and conquer and completely undermining the left-wing agenda.
And I think this actually is a point, well, it speaks to a point that I've wanted to, make for a while, and a criticism that I've always had with the Justice Democrats, which was, why was Ayanna Pressley ever even allowed to qualify as a Justice Democrat? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're going to have a group, an actual caucus of real, like, socialists or progressives, you can't just be letting people in that are nominally progressive or that want to, pretend to be progressive, which, let's be honest, that's what Ayanna Pressley is. She might be better than, like, your average fucking representative, but she's certainly not a real populist, progressive, socialist type politician. So I've always thought it was weird that they let her in the first place. And I think Kyle's right to kind of be a little bit suspicious about what she's whispering in the ears of her fellow squad members and to what effect. Do you guys think there's any, do you think there's any?
100%. Yeah, that's what I was just saying earlier when it's like she was like with Elizabeth Warren. She didn't even support Bernie Sanders. Like, that is completely sus. But RJ, you should unmute and jump in here.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, that out of all the squad members and progressives that ran for re-election, guess who's the only one that didn't receive a primary challenger?
Yeah.
So it lets you know who's really the op
in
the squad. That's what she is. Her job is to toe the line, police them. It's like babysitting. That's what her job is to do. And if you look at whoever endorses you for re-election, that's who you owe to. I mean, AOC thinking that Nancy Pelosi is mama bear, playing nice, thinking that, oh, maybe if I play a little bit nice and strategically with the mama bear, I can get something. No, you get screwed. When even your own peers voted against you for a committee assignment, like, get your head out of your ass. Like, they're not your friends. And look at Ilhan Omar. I mean, Nancy Pelosi not only endorsed her, but she fucking accepted the endorsement. Like, really? Like, now you're owed to her as well. I don't have much information on Rashida Tlaib because she stays off of Twitter. So that's actually fucking smart because we can go after her as well. And then Cori Bush, like really right before she even got elected, I mean, she went on Clyburn's podcast. And so, Uncle Clyburn now. So I don't know what type of influence he may have over her as well. But I mean, this is very concerning. And I'm not saying you can't have conversations with these people.
But you weren't
certainly
there
not
to make friends with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think that it just every opportunity to disappoint us and prove the point that people who said electoral politics was futile and we were all wasting our money and time. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm looking at those people like, yeah, you guys, you guys may have called it right.
Yeah. No, I mean, it kind of is getting to that point.
Although Gavin also makes the point a lot that obviously we wouldn't have these ideas as popularized as if we did. I just think we shouldn't repeat the mistake. Now these ideas are already popular and we're still losing, which is why I think we should maybe reevaluate our electoral strategy a little bit.
And even if you look back to the Civil Rights Act or whatever, it's not like the reason that was passed was because of a handful of progressives in Congress pressured the administration of LBJ to do it. It was because of mass public pressure. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Protests in the streets, intense demonstration, making it impossible for the government to deny the will of the people. So that's really what we should be thinking about. Not, let's waste another year or 5 years and thousands and millions of dollars electing progressives to Congress. It's really not going to move the needle, unfortunately, all that much. More than the needle has already been moved, which it has. So I think that's important to say. And also, I just think it's also worth saying that despite the fact that someone like Cori Bush or AOC, they were inexperienced when they got to Congress, and as Kyle said, they might be kind of leaning on Pressley, who's a little bit more experienced. I still don't think that's an excuse because, like I was saying, Cori Bush ran for Congress like 3 times. Did you not have a plan for when you were going to get there other than to listen to your senior member? Like, that was not what you said you were about, was sitting there and taking orders from Ayanna Pressley. You seemed like you had your own agenda.
She literally told us that she did, though. That's the thing. Like, I mean, we pulled the receipts last time. I mean, it was a completely different Cori Bush. And the other thing that I don't know why this isn't discussed more, but under Joe Biden, the pressure on from the squad about police brutality seems to have completely disappeared. It's been completely erased, which is something that we obviously we'll get into with the execution style murder of Andrew Brown by the police. These stories, they just kind of come at us like artillery fire constantly. There's no reform. But RJ, are you surprised Frank, pissed off, disappointed that the squad has completely abandoned this as an issue and completely settled under the boot of the Biden administration when it comes to police reform?
It's definitely disappointing. I do think the reason why the House progressives are kind of laying off this issue is because the CBC has kind of taken this up. Look at the aftermath of the trial. You had Reverend Al Sharpton, you had Jesse Jackson, you had the entire CBC out there. They're the ones pushing for the George Floyd Act, right? And you could say that there's a lot of good things in the bill in terms of police reform. Whether you're reformist or revolutionary, you want to abolish the police, that's a different type of conversation. But it did have some good things in the bill. The difference is the defund the police portion, right? So if the squad is saying they're for defund the police, if they say that, it would piss off the establishment and the CBC. And a lot of times, too, we've noticed with Nancy Pelosi, she said some really crazy stuff about how George Floyd was sacrificed for police reform when he was killed.
Disgusting shit I've ever seen or heard in my entire life. Like, how tone deaf.
Right. And so what I've noticed is that the CBC, which, me, I'm a black leftist, a lot of my Fred Hampton Less of co-hosts, we go after the CBC because they're just sitting there, they're not actually doing anything. So the establishment is using the CBC as cover while the progressives are just going to sit there because they feel like, oh, we can't culturally go after the CBC because it'll hurt us politically. But it's like, look, if you believe that this is an issue, that's a problem, you shouldn't be have to go after anyone and attack everyone. I'm a black leftist. I go after everyone for a policy difference that I believe is not up to par as a leftist. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah.